Just so I have a photograph, you can text the room. That's like this, and then they have. Last year, when I was asking.
Great. Like, the light got me.
So good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the 9th annual Stuart Z. Katz Professorship. We do this every year with great joy and enthusiasm. Other people will introduce Stuart. Other people will introduce our honoree, Antonio. I'm just here to welcome you, but to say the following, I think, Stuart, you know this. We're at a moment when the arts and the humanities are, in higher education, and the question of whether young people need this in their lives, film and poetry and history and philosophy, is being roundly questioned in our society. And, one of the truths on this campus is that while there is significant and substantial investment in the humanities, it's not evenly distributed. And one of the real beauties of the gift that you've given the college is that every year you allow the leadership and the faculty of this division to look across all the different disciplines and decide who is it that deserves this professorship for a year. And it's also a moment that allows our faculty to step back from some of the obligations and really show what they're made of. Renat has heard me say part of this years ago. My father was an English professor. When he retired, they published as part of his college obituary the one research grant he had gotten from Lemoyne College. It was $46. and it paid for gas from Syracuse to Massachusetts, where he stayed in an AYH hostel and charged one dinner at Friendly Ice Cream. And that was my father, the English professor's research grant there. And so the thing that you have seen fit to do here, which is to invest in the talent of our faculty and show what they can do with a year of, more or less unburdened from teaching and other responsibilities. And what we've seen every year, and we'll surely see this year, is talent and energy unleashed in ways that yield substantial celebratory achievements at the end of the year. So this is a truly visionary gift, and it has been for all of the years, and I'm deeply excited to hear what our current honoree and holder of the Katz Professorship has in store for this year. So thank you. Jane, I want to thank you also for being with us every year. It's great to see you. And now it is my pleasure to introduce the Provost of City College, Tony Liss. Thank you.
Thank you, Vince. It's my pleasure every year to get to introduce Stuart Katz, and I usually begin by talking about the previous winners of the Stuart Katz Professorship, and Dean Miller is always a little unhappy with me because she's going to do that. But anyway, the list has gotten too long, so I'm not going to do that this year. But I do want to say that it just makes me so proud to be part of this institution when we come here year after year and see the incredible talent and skill that the faculty have that we see in the presentations here. So I want to thank you, Stuart, for making that possible for all of us. So now it's my pleasure to actually introduce Stuart Katz. Stuart Katz graduated Phi Beta Kappa from this very fine institution in 1964 with a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science. And he went on to earn a JD from NYU School of Law in 1968, where he was the editor of the Law Review and a member of the Order of the Coif. And every year I have to look up what the Order of the Coif is and what it means. And the coif actually was like a headdress that they wore in the 12th century. So Stuart is a preeminent corporate and securities lawyer with a principal focus on merger and acquisitions. And since 1968, he was a member of the department at the corporate department at the law firm of Fried Frank, where he became partner in 1977 and served as counsel after 2009. Mr. Katz's law practice covered a wide range of corporate and securities transactions with a principal focus on mergers and acquisitions. He's worked extensively with major public and private companies in a variety of deals, including friendly mergers, hostile tender offers, proxy contests, leverage buyouts, and acquisitions and dispositions, and board of director of the Special Committee and Audit Committee assignments. He was recognized by Chambers USA as America's leading lawyers for business and Chambers Global, the world's leading lawyers for business, as a leading practitioner of corporate and mergers and acquisition law. He was selected as a super lawyer from 2006 to 2012, and again 2014 to 2018. And until recently, he taught classes on mergers and acquisitions at the NYU School of Law. So in addition to the generous gift which has established this professorship, Stuart has also funded the Stuart Z. Katz Scholarship at the NYU School of Law, which gives preference to students from the City College of New York, as well as students from the Bronx. There's a quote from Stuart on the NYU webpage, which I'll read, and it says, "My legal education was underwritten by the good faith donors who had given before me, So it's my privilege to be able to support the next generation of lawyers and legal scholars. Stuart Katz believes in giving back, and we are so grateful that you've chosen to give back to the City College by endowing the Katz Professorship. Ladies and gentlemen, Stuart Katz.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me okay? Good. President Boudreau, Provost List, Dean Miller, there she is. This year's Katz Professor Antonio Tibaldi, prior Katz professors who are with us or will be coming here, who are with us today. And last but not least, sturdy sons of City College. My brother, Gerald Harris, who is here, and my cousin, Philip Koltorf, who I think just got back from work, should be watching this on Zoom. And he was also a Townsend Harris medalist. Today, I'd first like to thank the person most responsible for shaping the broad reach of the Katz Professorship. And that person, of course, is the Dean of the Humanities and the Arts, Renata Miller. I'm just riding the wave Dean Miller so thoughtfully created and impressively has implemented. And a high wave it is indeed. City College gave me and many of my relatives the opportunity to receive a first class and affordable and free, today affordable, first class college education. And that's what the Katz is about. Recognizing and supporting a diverse and outstanding faculty in the humanities and the arts for the benefit of City's student body. Under Dean Miller, Katz professorships have been awarded to a jazz musician, thank you, yeah, you guys, to a jazz musician, an expert in modern art, a media and communications professor, a climate activist, an English professor, an historian, a Japanese-speaking Latin American literature and foreign language professor, a Black Studies and African cinema practitioner and scholar, to now Antonio Tibaldi, a writer-director of fiction and nonfiction films. What do these professors have in common? They are all, in one way or another, storytellers. The Katz demonstrates how the humanities and the arts uses so many disciplines to tell the story of humanity. Telling stories is essential to our understanding of who we are and where we should be going. In today's post-truth world, the power of stories to create empathy and change and lead us to a better place is aligned with the ethos that was instilled in me as a student at City College. And what medium is better at informing us, not only in the classroom, but throughout society, than fiction and nonfiction film? So it is my great pleasure to welcome you, Professor Tibaldi, an outstanding storyteller and truth teller, to the Katz Professorship, and to thank you for all you do for City College.
Thank you, Stuart. And so thank you for those beautiful words of praise, which I have to modify a bit because while we have had 9 annual Katz installations, I have only been in the role of dean for 4 years. So I have to give credit to 2 previous deans who got this all going. We refer to them in the Division of Humanities and Arts as the 2 Erics, my immediate predecessor, Eric Koch. And I believe, if my math and timeline have this right, that the initial shape of this award was shaped under Dean Eric White's now of blessed memory. So just giving credit where credit is due. But did become dean, one of the things that I embraced was the spirit of the Katz Professorship and the moment of the Katz Professorship at a time, as a time when we can celebrate not only the recipient of the professorship, but all of the great work that we're doing in humanities and the arts. And so, as President Boudreau has already said, we are deeply grateful for you providing this occasion for us to be able to celebrate all of that work. And so now I am going to name all 9 professors so that you have the full lineage. Some of whom are here, some of whom will be arriving later for a group photo. Many of them were teaching and are therefore not able to be in the room with us at this moment, which is testimony to the way that our faculty members engage our students in cutting-edge research and creative work. So, first of all, a reminder that our departments are now, we now have 9 of them in humanities and arts: English, philosophy, art, music, history, Black studies, media and communication arts, classical and modern languages and literatures, theater and speech, Jewish studies and Asian studies are 2 programs in addition. We celebrate the work across all of those departments, and specifically, we celebrate also the line of Katz professors. And those Katz professors are Mike Holliber, who in the music department, who was awarded the Katz for a jazz oratorio, This Rock We're On, Imaginary Letters. Ana Indich Lopez, professor of art, for her book on Mexico City and the aesthetics of public space. Andrea Weiss, professor of film in the Department of Media and Communication Arts, for her documentary on the Berlin airlift through her father's experience as one of its pilots. Emily Robitel, who is then professor of creative writing in the English department, but is now in our new Black Studies department, thus the emphasis on 9 departments in humanities and the arts, for what is now her book, Lessons in Survival, Mothering Against the Apocalypse. Michal Deckel, distinguished professor of English, for her work on a book that weaves together memoir and history of the Holocaust, and for a project on restitution after mass collective trauma. Professor of History Andreas Killen for his book, A History of the Brain in the Early Cold War. Professor of Classical and Modern Languages and Literatures, Araceli Tinajero, for her work on the relationships between Asia and the Caribbean. And Professor Bukari Sawadogo of Media and Communication Arts for his work on the emerging market of animation in Africa. Thanks to the work of great faculty like this, I am very happy to say that humanities and the arts is thriving at City College. Over the last 2 years, humanities and the arts has seen an over 12% increase in the number of students majoring in our departments. And this is because of the work of great faculty and great staff. We also have staff in the audience, and thanks to the support of wonderful alumni like the Katz family. Now I have the honor of introducing our latest Katz inductee, Antonio Tibaldi. Antonio is a filmmaker working in both documentary and fiction. A professor in the Department of Media and Communication Arts, he came to the United States from Italy in 2007 to earn his MFA as a Fulbright Scholar at the California Institute for the Arts. He taught at a number of institutions in Italy and the United States before joining the faculty of CCNY in 2007. Over the course of Antonio's entire career, his credits include work on nearly 50 films. Just in the last 5 years, his films include Gorgona, a documentary about Europe's last prison island agricultural penal colony, How She Didn't Die, a fiction film based on a documentary about a woman balancing ending her life while lessening the pain her son will experience as a result of that act. And We Are Living Things, a fiction film about two undocumented residents who travel from New York City to Arizona in search of the truth about a shared UFO abduction. At City College, Antonio has served with Professor Andrea Weiss, who is also a Katz professor, as co-director of our MFA film program. And our film program has roots in City College's distinguished history in filmmaking. I suggest, if you haven't read one of our recent newsletters, it is detailed in a beautiful article there written by Kylie Pastori-Esservatham. Antonio's films have been recognized with long lists of honors from festivals in the United States, Europe, and Asia, and his students have also garnered their own nominations and distinctions. In the spring of this year, Antonio was named a John Simon Guggenheim Fellow. So to add to his accolades, please join me in welcoming him now as he becomes our most recent Stuart Z. Katz Professor in the Humanities and the Arts.
Raise this a little bit. President Vince Boudreau, Provost Tony Liss, and Renata Miller, the Dean. I think Gerardo Blumenkrantz is here also, our, there he is, our chair of the Department of Media Communication and Arts. Thank you very much for organizing this and for having me stand here. I, of course, want to thank also, there's my students in the last row there. I was in a class, so I said, you guys get to end early. Thank you for coming. The staff, we have an amazing staff at Susan back there is a tremendous, been helping since last night, asking me if things were ready. So she is more in touch with what's going on than me. I want to thank, of course, Mr. Stuart Katz. It is an honor to receive, to be one of the professor of the professorship this year, the 9th. So I think there's 9 departments, the 9th, I believe in those strange things. So thank you so much for doing this, this gift, because I don't know how it is for colleagues who received it, but in film, we actually need funds to make films, and it's very, depending on what you're doing, it's sometimes not easy to get funding. It's never easy, but sometimes it's harder. And in the projects that I have been doing in the last years, it's particularly difficult because I approach them without really knowing too much about them. I like to discover what they will be about as I start to do them. So to have some, at least some seed money to really start and get me on my feet and be able to start a project, I need some funding. But if I don't know what I'm doing too well, I can write a page which is not going to be enough for a commercial network or for a nonprofit organization to support me. And I feel like here at City College, you know, I could just write a page and, you know, light a few candles and then get lucky. And I did apply a number of times for the Stuart Katz Professorship. I think a lot of my colleagues do it too, but I got just lucky. So a bit of luck, but the luck would be nothing without the original gift. And so the gift is very precious because it gives us the instruments to start the work at least. And then once it starts, it's, you know, if it goes well, it's like a snowball. And then it picks up speed, and then it's easier to get interest from other sources and so forth. So yeah, it's really from deeply that I do want to thank you. And this year I got double luck because also of course the Guggenheim Fellowship also has been instrumental in getting me going with these projects. So
I want to say also that I feel privileged to be working at City College. I have taught in a number of other places. I didn't stay very long. I never felt a real, I don't know, you kind of react to situations you're in. And the moment I set foot on this campus although I live on the Upper West Side, I had never been here almost like 17 years ago. I just loved it from the get-go. And I just feel that it's, we have guest lecturers come here, and when they're done with their lectures or meeting the students, they always, as we walk them or go and have lunch, they always say, what's amazing here is the students. I feel so lucky to serve my students. I really mean it. So for me, it's meaningful to then be given a fellowship that allows me to kind of put more wood on the fire and do more work, because I tell my students, film is not something you can teach. It's something you can learn, and you learn by doing it. And I think I am I don't necessarily love the word scholar, because I don't know, it has implication of school, which to me is associated when I was a kid and I hated school. But forget that for a moment. I consider myself a scholar in the sense that I continue to learn. And when I look at my students' work, every time I focus on the work and I'm learning from everything I see, whether it worked or it didn't work, whether you can make this. So it's always an adjustment, and it fuels, seeing their work fuels my passion for it. But if I stop making films, I think I would stop working, because it's connected for me. They're not, it's a bit like you need both to do it effectively. And if I didn't do it, if I knew I wasn't making films, I probably would stop teaching, because I would want to give my room, my space, my position replaced by either 5 amazing adjuncts or one, full-time person that they could do it better than I could do. So yeah, I really want to thank all of you and thank everything that's here. I really appreciate it. Also my colleagues, some of my colleagues I see are here. So now I want to try and give you an understanding of what I'm trying to do. In order to do so, I will backtrack a little bit in the process of making the film that I'm doing now. One of them is called Fuori. Fuori means out, but it also means freedom. If you've been incarcerated and you have a way out, if you finish your sentence and you're out, then you're supposedly free. And so the film that I'm doing is called Fuori, and I'm going to give you an overview and try and place it. It's in the process of being made. So that's why I want to show you or try and expose how it came about. I am very interested in how things are born. So this is a map of the Tyrrhenian Sea in Italy, Corsica, Sardinia. When I was about 15, I have a brother who was a couple of years older than me, and my father, my brother, and I would go. We had a little sailboat. We had spent time in Australia, where I was born, and in Sydney, and we loved sailing. So when my father was transferred back to Italy, we moved with him, and he had a little sailboat. And this particular area between Le Bocche di Bonifacio, between Corsica and Sardinia, has wonderful wind. So we were sailing there. It was the end of the summer. I was 14 and a half, and we're heading straight north. We were going in a place called Carrara, Marina di Carrara, between Liguria and Tuscany, a little port there. And beautiful, incredible windy day, 45 knots of wind, not a cloud in the sky. It was just a wonderful experience to be there with my brother and my father. But what happens, there's always a problem. This is an island that everybody who goes by sea on pleasure boats, on any vessels, would know that this is an off-limits island, because it's the island of Gorgona, Gorgona is the last agricultural penal colony active in Europe. It houses approximately 90 inmates, and you can't, there's only inmates and educators and police officers, prison guards. The prison guards and the educators usually do a 10, 12, 14-day shift on the island, then go home 14 days. Inmates, of course, stay there until the sentence or they get transferred. So they are stuck there. And the only exception is a 90-something-year-old woman called Luisa Citti, who's the only year-round habitant of this island. And I became very close to her because I spent a lot of time on this island. But as a 15-year-old, 14-and-a-half-year-old boy, we were sailing right here, beautiful, very windy. And I was actually at the helm. It was holding it like this, and it broke. It went down. So we were in a distress situation, and we called the police guards on the island, asking them if we could, go in for shelter. They, weren't too happy, but they say, okay, you can come in. And we got in, and this is what it looks like any time of the year. This is, Gorgona is one of the islands of the archipelago Toscano, and they're all national parks. They're of incredible beauty. And in any of the other islands, you would have boats everywhere in the summer. I mean, they would literally be, with their anchors here. They would organize, whatever, but there would be probably thousands of boats. So you're getting where it's kind of eerie, because this is what it looks like when you get in there. And so we were moored here. We went in, we assessed the damage, and the prison guards came and they said, not too friendly. They said, when you're done, I mean, when the sea calms down, you just leave. We said, okay. And they said, you can't trespass this line here. This is like where all the weapons of the police officer are, and they have their, observational site here, people going in, going out. Nobody lives here except that one woman. It used to be inhabited, but it was no longer inhabited. So we were there, and it's kind of spooky and eerie. And this is kind of a view that almost from where we were, it's not quite at this angle. This is one prison and this is the other one. And here, these are inmates. So at night, I remember I was sitting in the cockpit of the little sailboat, and we were looking out, and we saw these dots, and some of them were still working on the fields, and they had farm tools, like real farm tools, And I'm thinking, in a 15-year-old mind, I'm thinking, okay, what if they don't go in and that night, and then they hide, and then they'll come to the marina and use the farm tools as weapons, get on our boat and leave, and because papillon, those things, And I'm like, wow. I was actually scared, I remember, But then, of course, it's all imagination. Nothing happened. A day and a half later, we left. And that was the end of that story. But I was left with this kind of, fear of, I would call it fear of the inmates. And fast forward about 30 years, my father lived in Tuscany, not far from there. And there is an article on the newspaper when I was visiting with my family, with my little kids and my wife. And the article was talking about, this winemaker, Mr. Frescobaldi, who is a very well-known winemaker in Tuscany, had started making wine using inmates as labor, and would then organize every year. I found out later, he organized like a gathering of all the media and would promote this wine that he sold at very high prices. And he would get a lot of talk about his, nice gift that he was doing. I mean, I'm not criticizing, I'm just saying it was a commercial operation where he was hiring inmates to make the wine, but he would maximize the media attention. And so I'm reading this, I'm saying, wow, that's where, that's the island. So we started reminiscing about this island. And all these kind of emotions came back of that fear of the experience I'd had. And I said, and my wife is a travel writer, and I said, well, maybe we should, apply, because you can't just go there. You have to apply. It's pretty complicated. So they have day trippers that can go there. So anyway, we found out the information. You have to give in your passport. You have to show that you are not a convict or ex-convict. And then, you get approved, you get on a list. And then on the day, 2 days before they confirm, and you're supposed to go. Well, we tried 3 times, and every time it got canceled because there was a bit of wind, a bit of sea. They can't house people. So if they bring 80 people on the island and the sea gets rough, they're stuck on the island. Where do they put them? So there is some kind of trepidation to bring people and not be able to bring them back. And then just some logistics hurdles. Anyway, 3 times we tried, 3 times we couldn't. And I'm a little bit like, I take sometimes when I get a lot of negative response, I think there must, maybe either I say, okay, I'm not supposed to go there, or no, I have to go there. And I'm maybe on to the other, and I say, there must be a reason why it's so difficult. So I basically decided to write to the ministry of, the appropriate ministry in Rome, to get permission to go to the island to do surveys for a film. And I thought, I wrote it, I found out how to do it. I wrote it on a computer, I printed it, I put a stamp in there, I sent it like an email, like a real letter. And then I thought, it's not that I forgot about it, but I thought, oh, well, I did what I could. And if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And 6 months later, I actually got another letter, came back from Italy with a stamp and, all the thing that it was a raccomandato. It was a special letter that needed proof of arrival, very bureaucratic letter that allowed me to go for a 12-day survey with a camera on the island. So I was like, wow, this is amazing. So that's where this whole adventure of a film, making a film on this island started for me. And I think I like to, I think a lot of times there are coincidences that are, that can become, if they're aligned, they kind of become your destiny. And I wasn't aware of this when this started. I really thought I would go for 10 days and that's it. Well, the truth is I went there for those 10 days, and now this was many years ago. I know I'm kidding, but it was really a long time ago. And now I'm making 3 films about, not necessarily about this island, but about incarceration, about inmates, about that reality. That is a reality that I have not committed serious crimes, so I have not been incarcerated. But it became very interesting to me, that segment of population and how it's underrepresented in a certain way in films. It's always very difficult to get permission to stay in prisons for a long time. And I think if you're going to make a documentary that tries and delve into a little bit deep into that reality, you need time. It's just kind of as simple as that. And this, making this film Gorgona became an opportunity to spend a lot of time on the island and to become pretty close to a lot of the inmates that were there. So this is, I went there. This is the first trip that I went there. I had basically my equipment and I was left to my own devices, literally. There was nobody. I just came, there was nobody. Just like this. An inmate, I figured he was an inmate. He was missing a finger. He was kind of nice, but weird. It was just very eerie for me to be on this island trying to figure out what. Nobody welcomed me. Nobody told me what to do. And they put me in the house as far away as I could on that island so that I would have to walk. There was no cars. There's only 5 cars that all belong to the police, no other cars. So I had this very lightweight equipment walking around. It's not, I'm trying to meet people. They're all inmates. the first question would be, why are you here? But it's the question you can't ask to an inmate because they're going to be reserved about, the crimes they've committed. So anyway, for me, it was kind of a way to get used these first 10 days, but I had the feeling that there would be a there. And so I went back on this island 6 times in the course of 3.5 years, and I made a film that I had 390 hours of footage, and I made a 1.5-hour film. So to edit the film, it took. This is filming. It's pretty desolate. I was filming vineyards, for free. No, there was people working there. The post-production took 1.5 years to do. Yeah, I had to figure out a way how to do this, and I'm going into these details because they're relevant to the language. I mean, I think cinema is like a language, and when you're by yourself, you're a one-man crew, so you have to be light with the equipment, and you also have to figure out technically how to bring the goods back, because otherwise you're just doing images, but they have no sound. And one thing I realized, and it's very hard to put mics on people who you don't know, who maybe are not, they're not going to be necessarily very trustful of you, because why does this go, what does he want, and so forth. So I basically realized that in order to film without putting mics on people, I had to use wide-angle lenses and be very close to people. And that became kind of the style of the film that I made. And that took me 3.5 years of filming to do it. And I realized when I was doing that, I have kind of very high-end microphones with a really good sound mixer. I could hear people breathing, animals and the inmates, when I could actually hear their breath. And to me, that kind of, I thought what I'm doing is I'm bringing the spectator on the island. I'm the only one here, but I can bring my audience to hear and watch it if I observe the reality that I'm seeing. So that's what I did for in the course of these 3.5 years. And I'm going to show you the trailer to that film. It's 3 minutes.
Allora, Vincenzo, tanto quando è arrivato, insomma, com'è stato il primo impatto?
È stato bello. Per me che ho girato tanti istituti è stato una cosa nuova. Questo è il 28esimo, quindi
28, ma sempre nella stessa detenzione o
nell'altra.
adesso che vi siete riuniti qua, e come la vede? Cioè,
Mia madre si è fatta 25 anni di carcere. Mia madre sta stanca, non ce la fa più.
2 anni, sì. E com'è la carcerazione? Dormire per terra, ci sono le brande, sì. Materassi, c'è tutto.
No, materassi non c'è.
Niente, solo per terra, così. Quante persone in una stanza? 50. 50, 100, 1000, questo così, un animale.
Che devi insegnare a baciare?
Non esistono assassini, stupratori, pedofili, non esiste nemmeno il là. Perché se tu a una persona gli dici sei un pedofilo, non lo segni per quell'errore che ha fatto nel passato, ma lo segni anche per il futuro.
E allora perché mi ha messo la macchina?
Non è stato messo il marchio di assassino, sei stato condannato per aver commesso un omicidio, che è diverso.
Alleluia, oh mio Signore, alleluia, oh Dio del cielo.
So that was the trailer for Gorgona, the film that I made on this prison island. What happened then, this was in November 22 that the film got accepted in the Festival dei Popoli, which is the oldest documentary film festival in Europe and Italy's most prestigious one. So I was very happy. Also, I'm from Tuscany, so I was like, yay, bringing the film home, so to speak. And we were trying to see how, we invited the head of the prison, Gorgona, who was a very illuminated guy who gave me a lot of access to a lot of areas of the prison that you would never get access to, but he trusted me and he knew I was very persistent and I wouldn't stop until he would say yes, so he gave me yes. And so I was able to make the film that I was able to make thanks to him. And I thought, okay, we invite, head of the prison, it would be nice to have some inmates. And so I reached out to Vincenzo, the first inmate you saw when he was being interviewed by the educator in the trailer. I had stayed in touch with him through the years, and so I knew he had been transferred to Sardinia, to another prison in Sardinia. And I thought, would you want to come on a special permission from the prison? And so he said, yeah, I'd love to come. So he came for the premiere, and we spent a couple of days, not the whole day, but 3 or 4 hours each day talking. And he would bring me up to speed about what he was doing. And just there in November of 22, when we were there, he said, I am in Sardinia. I got I got transferred there because there is a program in Sardinia. There is a judge that applies the law the way it is, where once you are at the last 3 or 4 years of your sentence, if you have had a good behavior in prison, you can start to get a job outside. And you can also, if you find a place that is, according to the regulations, a place to live and you can afford it, you can even live outside in the last 3 or 4 years of your sentence. And so he said, I'm going to do this, I'm going to apply for this. My father, I'm going to have him come to Sardinia to work in the same restaurant where I think I find a job. So to me, that sounded really interesting. And he said, basically, we decided these are the father and son, here's us presenting the film together. So we did a lot of presentations of the film together, and it's pretty unique to have somebody who spent 20 years in prison for robberies be sitting here and talking very freely. And he's very, very straightforward, very kind of doesn't embellish things, say things the way they are. So he's a very interesting character. And so we decided in those 3 days that we were in Florence together presenting the film that I would try and start a new film with him. And this new film is the one that I am making now. So it took me a while to get here, but without this backstory, it wouldn't make a lot of sense. But I decided to at least start. And I would go to Sardinia and where he was and film the hearing that he had to get something called affidamento esterno, which is when you are kind of on parole. So you're still in prison, sleeping in prison, but you're working outside. And now you are trying to get permission to go and live outside while you're still doing your sentence. So it's like it's a guarded freedom. 10 p.m. they check you, and you always have, you have a perimeter in which you can operate, and you can be free. If you trespass, you're back in. So I thought there was elements there that were interesting. And the other thing that I thought was very interesting is this relationship that Vincenzo has with his father, because the roles are somehow reversed. Vincenzo is an extremely smart guy. He has a degree in economics. He has a degree in hospitality. I mean, he's very, very, very smart, very fast thinking. Very judgmental. He's very extreme. So he's an interesting character for a film, even for a non-fiction film. He's kind of one of those characters you would write in a fiction film. And his father is a bit like the, Lenny and Bruce in Of Mice and Men. He's kind of, you kind of have to look after him. He's gonna get into trouble. I'm not saying he's not smart, but his intelligence has not helped him much in his own course of his life. So to me, it sounded interesting, and I decided to try and film his hearing that would take place literally was 3 months later. So I was very lucky to just go to Sardinia. I was introduced by a friend who knew a lot of the people who worked there. He was from Sardinia. And I met these people in Sardinia that were like, okay, we can help you. We applied for some funding, and we were able to film his hearing, and that I thought, honestly, I thought I would probably film the whole film in 2 or 3 weeks, because I was interested in the kind of the, I don't know, I thought at the beginning that I would do a film about getting out of prison. If you're in a house and you get out, it's not that interesting. But if you're in a prison and you get out, I know because I've seen it, it can be very interesting. And the problem is that the prison in Sardinia did not allow, just give me very basic access. They did not allow me to film all these dialogues that would take place with the institution and so forth. So I was left with just a bunch of images of him in prison. And then I realized, the other thing that I realized when I first went there in 20, it was in 2023. Yeah, I went there in March 2023 to film his hearing, and I stayed another 10 days. I realized, wow, it's not going to be a film unless I allow time to have its influence on these characters. And so it became a much, much bigger project as I started filming it. And his father was still in the prison of Gorgona. And if you're in prison in Gorgona, you can't start to reintegrate because it's an island, it's just a prison, there's nothing else. So you can't get a job outside and go back and sleep in prison. The only job is for the prison. So his son was like, you got to get out of there. I know it's a national park. I know it's beautiful, but you got to come here. So he basically took, a bit like a father would do with his son, he brought him there. So there is, the film that I'm doing now is kind of this reversed balance between the son, who is really his father's, he acts like a father to his father, and just the dynamics of getting back into society, having spent 20 years in prison. So they are, especially Vincenzo, the son, who's 43, he acts very much like a teenager in his behavior in many ways, in certain ways. So all these things kind of interested me. So now I'm going to show you a 10-minute clip. It's a bunch of scenes put together of the film that I'm doing now, called Fuori.
Con istanza pervenuta il 7 di novembre 2022 e Vincenzo Palumba ha richiesto il beneficio della misura alternativa dell'affidamento in prova residente sociale o della semilibertà. Segnatamente viene posto in risalto che il Palumbo proviene da un nucleo problematico, il padre prurito giudicato.
E ammazzi qualcuno, ti danno l'ergastolo, poi non è più come prima, ti danno 30 anni, però capisci che se entri che hai 40 anni, 30 anni, ce ne hai 70, esci col bastone. Ma per i reati che ha fatto lui ne ha fatto abbastanza, basta. Io gli ho detto, io non ci vengo in carcere a trovarti se ti arrestano. No, gli ho detto, te lo puoi dimenticare, mi interessa se avevi del moglie dei tuoi amici.
Un mio compagno di classe della scuola elementare aveva fatto cazzate e doveva andare in galera per 5 anni ed è uscito, però non era più lo stesso, capito? Era il padre di una famiglia, però i genitori l'hanno ritrovato di stare assieme, però no, non funziona più, non sei più la stessa persona, non...
No, perché io l'ho conosciuto già così. Quindi se tu lo rifai mi stai prendendo per il culo, no, insomma, che mi prendi in giro.
La versa di visto sa crema.
Questi leccamenti sono bambusci, come va?
Certo. Allora, questo te lo so. Diciamo, prendere il bottone subito.
Aspettare, che subito, subito. Aspettare, aspettare. Sì, ma devi aspettare, spiego subito che gli fare.
Non te lo fare,
No, no, no. Ja, ma... Ja. Ma domani mattina, rimane mattina. Alle 11, dalle 11. Poi ce la facciamo, io che sbarco tra lei. Per 7 e mezza alle 8 a Ostia. Poi da fu biglietto, tac, se non compagnia vicina la macchina. Ok, andiamo più tardi. Ah, buono. Fammi sapere, ti chiamo dopo il servizio.
Come lo sente Vincenzo rispetto a come vi eravate conosciute anche quando eravate qua a Gorgona così?
Lui stava sempre un po' su chi va là, un po' nel fosetto sempre, no? Che diceva ho fatto una barca di anni di carcere, ha detto ce l'abbiamo voluto anche noi a fare una barca di anni. E comunque adesso lo vedo proprio diverso, lo vedo proprio, diciamo, bene, bene, bene.
Adesso è il tempo in cui lei deve proprio guardarsi, sentire il valore che lei può avere ancora, riscoprirlo, magari se ne è dimenticato lei per primo, no? Prima che gli altri ancora, lei
Sì,
stesso fa un
ci
po'
sono perso tante cose nella famiglia, tutto questo. Per esempio, se io non andavo a delinquere da tanti anni a venire a questa parte, magari stavo ancora con mia moglie, avevo cresciuto i miei figli, diciamo, avevo visto crescere, e si sono perso tante, tante, tante cose. E quindi questa è una cosa che mi mancherà per tutta la vita.
certo.
Che vedi i miei figli sono tutti grandi, diciamo, no? Si sono perse quelle cose, l'adolescente, tutte quelle cose. Che devo fare? Che devo fare? Per me, lo chef che tu mi hai detto, che le cose sono andate e sei diventato tu cuoco, è giusto o no? Vabbè. Dici, tu sai, papà, io ci ho fatto sempre, diciamo, carcere, burdinale, dicevo, ma adatto, per me mi cerco di adattarmi facilmente, non è che ci vuole, il sappiamo come funziona, come si cucina e come non si cucina. Io là, eh, eh, a speranza che comandi scrive una bella stampatella, se no vanno due pallone. La prima volta, quando un mio amico mi ha messo il camion in mano, ha detto passi di qua, adesso ti insegno a portare il camion. E poi sono andato a delinquere un pochettino con questi camion. mi hanno anche sparato lì a Roma, a Fiano Romano. Mi sono arrivato 2 proiettili di qua e me l'hanno operato di qua. È una cosa che secondo me, prendendo una raffica di mitra, 2 proiettili che attraversano tutto il corpo, era difficile uscirne vivo. E ringrazio a Dio, dall'82 adesso sono tanti anni. E Vincenzo che c'aveva 3 anni. Vincenzo era troppo, come si dice la parola giusta? Era troppo vispo, troppo intelligente, troppo furbo. Faceva impazzire la mamma. Allora, si andava a scuola, quello era piccolo di 7-8 anni, gli hanno trovato 3 milioni dentro la cartellina dalle suore. Figurati.
Al 30% all'anno, nel 2025 lo studio è raddoppiare la capacità potenziale con la rimessa a nuovo di capitale chiuso e la vale 23 miliardi di euro. Cuore elettronico italiano del sistema di comunicazione, una scelta di compromesso, la volontà di
These are just like a bunch of scenes. It could be a possible beginning, but we're still very much in the process of making the film, so it's early to see how it is. But just to give you a little bit of a sense of the world we're talking about. It's interesting because when you make a nonfiction film, at the end there's 3 things that I always think. One is what is it about, and then do you have access to that reality? And then once you have those 2 things, then what is the angle on it? So I'm thinking, okay, I kind of think I know what, on a big broad term, what it's about. It's about reintegration. And I have access because the interesting thing with Vincenzo, especially, Vincenzo is the one who is really pretty smart, the son. The father a bit less, to be fair, so my dialogue is pretty much with the son all the time. And he said, I spent 23 years in prison. I have almost no memories because the memories stay only if there's a diversification. If every day is exactly the same, it kind of stacks up and becomes just one giant day, and it's a nightmare. So I think for him, it's this idea that, well, we made one film together, and he really enjoyed is the wrong word, but he got something out of it, because in prison people don't have phones, they a lot of times don't have mirrors, so their sense of identity is really kind of gone, it's put in a drawer. And to have somebody who persistently films you, and a lot of times when I was filming them on the island, they were like, "But why are you filming me for 5 hours?" I said, "I don't know, because it's interesting to me." And so then it became, well, if it's interesting to him, this guy who comes from all the way to New York, maybe it's interesting what I do. I don't know, it gives value, because at the end it's in relation to the world around you that you kind of identify yourself and single yourself out. So yes, there is an interest, desire of Vincenzo, and it's been years now since I started, 2.5 years filming this new film. And at first I thought it would only be the process of being from in jail to getting out. Because, a part of you is very, it is a part of me, a little, how you would say, the word in English, pigro, means lazy, and I think I just want to get this done in 4 weeks of filming, then it's done. I got all this footage, I cut it, be a great film. And the truth is, when you're dealing with things like prison, people doing time is what you need, because I realized after the first sections of shoots that I did in March 2023, I realized that he's almost like Vincenzo is like a block, like a monolith person. And the only thing that will make him change, if anything, is time. is time in a new environment, maybe with a girlfriend, maybe, you know, beginning to really work and having to rely on himself and not have a place to sleep that is given to you because you're in jail, you know? So it's kind of making it on his own, very much like a teenager or like a young adult will start to make it, but he's a middle-aged guy, you know? So Vincenzo lives in this kind of dichotomy and contradiction of not being that young anymore, but on an emotional level, being like a teenager, like an overgrown teenager. So, you know, I also work on fiction films, and to me, it occurred to me that as a character, he's an interesting character because of these traits, and because his traits are the result of a history of his place in the world, you know, and in society. So yeah, that's what you know, kind of embarking on, and now it's way too late to stop. And I think that the film will continue filming. I'm not planning to film too much because luckily he's all the way in Sardinia, so I can't just go out and shoot every day, because I probably would not almost every day, and then I would end up with thousands of hours, because it's an addiction a little bit, you know. But basically going there, I went there already 5 or 6 times to Sardinia to film him. And I know that in the beginning of 2027, he finishes his sentence. And I also know, I think 99.9% he will not commit additional crimes between now and when he ends his sentence. And I think, although he's looks like a free person, he's not, because he has a curfew, he has a perimeter, geographical perimeter where he can move. Anything he does that is not being approved has to be approved. Like if he moves apartment, he has to find the apartment, get it approved. I mean, everything has to be treated, rightfully so, I guess, like a child, you know, like somebody who is not really able to be responsible. And until his sentence is finished, he will continue to have the same obstacles to real freedom, you know. And so I think the film will probably end the production towards the middle or first quarter of 2027. And then, you know, we started editing, already shaping the film, and I think the film will be completed maybe by the end of 2027, something like that. Interesting thing, though, is that in the meantime, I made another film, and that really is thanks to the Stuart Katz grant and to the Guggenheim. I did a film about the sole inhabitant of the island. It just finished it. I didn't want to show it here because it's not ready to be screened, but it's 64 minutes long, and it's about this woman who lives. She passed away, unfortunately, which was one of the motivating factors for me to make the film. But when I was on the Gorgona Island, I had so much red tape to film before the last prison director came, that I ended up always going to Luisa Citti's house, the sole inhabitant, and we spent a lot of time together. And she doesn't talk to many people, so when I was there, she would talk a lot. So I have all these really interesting stories. And so I made a film about her, and it's completed, and I will have it ready by in about 3 or 4 months with the sound design and the work. So this will be, in many ways, a trilogy, like a three-headed monster. You know, Gorgona being the first one, the one about Luisa Citti is the second one, and this one starts in prison. Hopefully, doesn't end in prison. You know, ends in freedom, and that's why I called it Freedom. And then maybe I'm done with prison, unless, you know, I commit my own crimes and see what it really feels like to be inside without making a movie about it, you know. So that's a little bit what I'm doing. I hope it wasn't too long-winded. That I thought it was important to frame it, because never, you know, 8 years ago, I never thought in my life that I would be still doing a movie about prison. You know, my family, my kids, my wife, they really make fun of me. Who's this, you know? Meaning the only people that call me is the inmates, you know? So yeah, that's a little bit what I'm doing. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts or questions, I'm happy to try and respond to the best of my ability.
Yes, we are now going to take questions from the audience, and that audience, then we're going to take questions both from the audience in this room and also the audience online. So, questions for Antonio.
Hey, students, you guys have to ask the questions.
Thank you. I think I have two questions, and I'm sorry if you said this already. It's a male-only prison, but there's no women on the island at all.
Yeah, it's only a male-only prison. In Italy, most of the prisons are divided by gender. There's about 190 prisons. I did all my research after I'd done the film. So I actually researched it. There's about 190 prisons in Italy. I don't know if there's any co-eds one, maybe a couple, but they're usually divided.
And my second question, will you or are you allowed to show the movie or the documentary in prison once it's done?
Yes, when I did the Gorgona film, I really wanted to, so I made arrangements with the prison director, and we kind of set up a room. We put some trash, what do you call the black trash bags on the windows, and the inmates came. And it was like really interesting to screen it, because some of the people who are in the film Gorgona, it's a 90-minute film, were still in Gorgona, and they were very kind of, some of them were very complaining. It for a minute, and I said, I told you, I'll cut you out, because you're filming them for hours and days, and they're like, But like the father of Vincenzo was crying when he saw the film. He said, I didn't know, because in the film, the son really talks a lot about his father, and he was very moved. So I didn't know you. I didn't know he said that, So to me, it's important when you make a nonfiction film to actually screen it for the people who are in it, because it feels incomplete to me as a process. And so I was very happy. It's complicated to get to that island, my God, but I really wanted to, so I did it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, other questions? And I also want to say, for the people who are online, please put your questions in the chat and we will find them there. Yeah.
Professor, how was the decision made which inmates would be sent to Gorgona? Was it just a regional thing, or was it something about the nature of their crime and the nature of the prison?
Yes, sure. That's a great question. So what they prefer for Gorgona is long sentences, which means, and terminal sentences that have been defined by what would be called the justice. It's like you're not appealing it. You have accepted your sentence. Let's say it's 18 years. And they like long sentences because they think that the type of incarceration in Gorgona needs time to have an effect. Because what's interesting in Gorgona is that the inmates run the island. They are the plumbers, they are the electricians, they repair the roads, they cook, they make bread. Everything that happens on the island is done by inmates. So they want long sentences so that they get so that inmates find not satisfaction, but find a reward in doing a job. Even if they're not paid very much, they are paid and they can put that money away. And so that's what they want. And the other thing they want, and again, they prefer, because it's not always easy, is to get people who have actually some skills. Like if you've worked in a kitchen, they're happy. If you have some electric background, because then they put you to work as, in that capacity. Because Gorgona, it's interesting, it is 20 nautical miles away from Livorno, so it's not that close. Sometimes for 4 or 5 days in bad weather, they're cut off. So they have to be self-sufficient. Yeah.
So in most prisons in the United States, the inmates become divided by factions often, and a certain hierarchy develops. And it's interesting, on this island, you're saying they are basically on their own. And I wonder if you found that they developed their own sort of form of self-government.
Yes, I think that would happen pretty much anywhere. In Gorgona, I think I showed you that shot at the beginning. I'll show you again. Okay, this one, this is called Sezione Capanne, and this is houses about 70% of the inmates are up here, and the cells are 2, 3, and 4 people in each cell. And this one is called Articolo 21, which is the name of it's actually the name that is given judicially to inmates who, if this was not an island, they would be on parole, so they would be almost finished with their sentences. So, and this one has single rooms. They're actually pretty nice, these cells. And in this one, people, they don't lock them during the day. They only lock them at night. Whereas in this one, at noon, they call la conta, they count them. And the way they count them, just everybody has to go in the cell, and the police, the officer comes by and says, and are you there? Are you there? Are you there? And that's it. But yeah, I think the dynamics, what people say, even in this kind of this is called, in Italy, they call it the 5-star prison, this prison. A lot of inmates want to go there. But like everything in life, there is a pro and a con. The big pro is you're in an amazing place. And the cells open in the morning and you say, I'm going to work there, I'm going to work there. So it's almost like a boarding house, like if you were in a, boarding house or I just say one of those schools where you sleep, those, anyway. Yeah, exactly. But the problem is that everybody who is in prison wants to get out. And if you are in Gorgona, you can't, the only job you have is given to you by the prison system. So you can't develop a relationship, say, with the butcher, with the bread store, or, and then they would hire you for 2 or 3 years while you're still in prison. And they have incentives to do that in Italy. So there's an incentive, a financial incentive. You get a tax rebate if you hire inmates, on the last 2 or 3 years of their sentence, they get parole and they can work for you. But in Gorgona, that doesn't happen because the only guy is the winemaker who hires 3 people out of 90 and teaches them how to prune and how to harvest and so forth, So again, the pro and con. The pro is you're in an amazing place, you breathe good air, it is pretty amazing, but when you're done, and then you're out on your own, and you haven't developed any relationships with possible people that could hire you. Because the only way to stay out of jail is stop committing crime. And inmates, most of them are obviously not naturally wealthy, because otherwise they probably wouldn't have committed those type of crimes, other crimes, but not those. And so they, that's what happens. And Vincenzo, when he's very smart, he's really a smart guy. He has a degree in economics, a degree in hospitality school. And he figured, I'm not going to stay here because I love it here, but I want to get out. And so he was transferred to Alghero because he knew there was a permissive judge who would apply the law and he could get out, basically. And that's what he did,
I assume this film is in Italian.
Yes,
Right.
it's in Italian.
So and so who would you try to show it to? And what are you hoping people will get out of watching the film?
The new one I'm making, or the old, or the Gorgona, or the new one with this trilogy.
Gorgona.
Well, Gorgona, the problem is the language of it. It's in Italian, so the main market is in Italy. Gorgona was finished, like I said, in November 2022, and we won that festival that we went to, which gave us a bit of mileage in terms of finding a distributor. So we found a theatrical distributor and a platform distributor in Italy. And so I released the film in 2 different separate moments in Italy. 2 years ago in 2023 and 2024, we had a theatrical run where I would be like doing like event screenings where we would invite, I would always invite it, but sometimes we invite like a scholar or the prison, maybe not the prison director of this prison, but of another prison, and we would do an outreach. So it becomes, to show theatrically a non-fiction film that doesn't have big movie stars, even in Italy, it's a job, you have to get your audience. And most people, you're looking at prison, most people know they exist, and most people are not necessarily interested in them. Or they're like, it's kind of the hidden part, So there's not a huge interest out there, but we did these 2 theatrical, about 3 or 4 weeks runs, and I can't tell you how long the discussions went. They went really well in terms of the people who saw the film and stayed for the discussions. It was very, very rewarding from personal and intellectual, very stimulating to have these discussions. But yes, it's a very narrow part of your audience, and you have to go and fish them and get them. They're not going to come. So it's like the work never ends, it's hard to make them and then hard to get them seen, And in America, it's complicated. I didn't get much result in even in festivals, which would be where these films play. And I'm honestly a little bit surprised that I didn't get more traction with it. But you have to accept, Gorgona is an observational film, and for those who understand what filmmaking, who has a knowledge, really a deep knowledge of film, people are afraid of them because what an observational film does is actually requires the audience to do a lot of the work. Because me as a filmmaker, I'm really not explaining. I'm just opening a window into a reality, and I'm just observing. So I'm observing human behavior in that reality. And I try and pick realities that we don't have access to. So we get to know them through the film. We don't recognize them because we've already seen them. And I think the prisons I've been to prisons in America, not as an inmate, but for projects. And they're very, very different than in Italy. Very, 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 very different. In Italy, there is, and I think in Europe, there is, first of all, the death penalty doesn't exist. And the mandate of prison is reintegration. So even a life sentence is never really a life sentence. You can always get out if you do good behavior, if you prove that you can contradict the initial sentence you were given. So they never take the hope out of humans. And I think that the death penalty kills you already when you get it. And life in prison is pretty brutal. It means you'll never get out. So again, this is a very touchy subject matter, but everybody has their own opinions. But one thing I noticed is it's a very drastically different system.
Therapy or whatever, trying to reform these people, do they get, or are they just really serving their time there and they're not getting any?
I think it depends a lot on which prison, because in Italy there's approximately 190 prisons. Some of them are very progressive and have a real system that really addresses the issue of reintegration with educational programs, with the inmates having to see their a psychologist at least 2 times a month and keep a log of everything that happens. But not in the Constitution, it's really the mandate is reintegration, and so that the investment on the inmate, the payback happens when they're released. The problem is recidivism. How many of people who do time in prison and end up being released and are back in prison again? Huge amount, and that's true to pretty much all the countries that I am aware of. It's a very, very complicated, difficult issue. Thank you, sure.
Thank you. My question was, you talked about getting on the island initially and then having issues with access for some time before the new warden, I think you said, came in. I was curious if that came with any questions for you in terms of the narrative around control over how the prison was perceived from their position of power in terms of how they gave you access to the story. So in terms of if there was any critical elements that the participants shared about the system that you had to navigate, or if at that point you kind of were given the green light to full access without control over the final edit and cut.
Oh yeah, no, control of the is not negotiable for me in the sense that if I'm gonna do this work, I have to final cut on it. The question of the relationship with the subjects is really complicated in prison, because I think, as I mentioned, I can't just pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm coming, to the prison. Are you going to be there? Because the question would be, sometimes they get permits to go out. They have like 3 or 4 days where they can visit their family or just be on permit, and then I would want to make sure they're there. But for most of the time that I was shooting on the island, I had absolutely no help from the educators, from the police, from the director of the prison, until the last prison director came back. And even then, it's not like I would say, oh, do you think that Vincenzo will be there when I come? I had no idea. They said, look, you're asking too many questions, just come, So I was kind of left to my own devices, even once I had access. The issue there for me, what was very interesting filming in prison was, and I think I talked a little bit about it, was that it was very clear if somebody wants to be filmed or not. Like, I'm there with my camera and I approach it, say 5 people, and I always ask them, I don't do that necessarily in here, like in New York when I'm filming, I probably should, but I always say, is it okay, guys, if I film, And if one of them says no, then I just move away. And then the other 4 will say, no, but we want to be filmed. They say, yeah, but I don't want to, I'm not going to film. So you go away, like that. So basically they would give me access by saying, yes, we want to be filmed. And I realized that it's not like, yeah, it's okay if you film. They actually wanted to be filmed because, at the end, think of if you lived with no mirrors and if you lived with nobody really giving any thought of what you're doing. And here's this kind of insane looking person alone carrying the camera coming all the way from New York, because they'll know everything about me that you can know. They told me that later. Say, we knew exactly when you were coming, where you were staying, I'm like, really? So, because, nothing happens, life in prison is always the same. And if you're in that island, the fact that I would come, the moment I stepped foot on the island, they wouldn't even know before, because the word would go out, And so sometimes I would be walking and I'm looking for, let's say, Vincenzo, and I hear, oh, no, and I'm like, yeah. I said, where are you? I'm up there. So I would, walk up. But I never imagined it would be so kind of insane and casual to film, it's a prison island, and it's like, it's still in Italy and things are very loose. And if you know the culture, which I kind of do, I also know how they negotiate myself in there, So the access I was given by the inmates who wanted me there. Say, oh, you should come in my cell. And I said, but they don't want me to go in the prison, And then I would ask, and then until the new director came, he was actually the guy who was there at the very beginning when he started his career as a warden. And the last job he had, he wanted to go back to that island because he loves that island. That island has a little bit of a magic spell on people, including myself. It's a pretty amazing place. There's no other place like it that I know of, Think of a place that's been a prison island since 1869. It's amazing. It's like there's 4 vehicles in the whole island, 4 cars. That's all there is. I made a film about her, so maybe I'll invite you to the screening. But she is there because she was born there. She's the offspring of one of the 7 families who repopulated the island in the 19th century. So she was already very connected to the island, having been born there in 1927. And then her father died in a very tragic accident when she was only 12 years old. And so then she got married when she was 15, and then with an older gentleman. And then when her husband passed away, she told her kids, she had 2 kids, she said, I'm going back to the island. And so she spent the last 45 years of her life on the island. The last 7 years of her life, I found out, she never left the island, not even for a day. She's amazing. Yeah. Yeah. So I had to make a film about her. Yeah.
And the last question is going to come from the chat, and it is, having met so many inmates, did you believe that any of them were innocent? And I guess you can tell us a bit about how you felt about that and how you managed that.
It's interesting because when I first got to the island, when I got permission to do my film survey, I see these people, and the one thing I want to know is, why are you here? Meaning, what have you done? Because it's kind of the, what did you do? Did you rob a bank? And then I realized very quickly that it's not a question I can ask off the bat. It's a question that kind of, it's an argument that would come out more from them than if I asked them. It's kind of the no question, And even the prison guards were like, you can't ask them anything about their past, And I said, well, I mean, you negotiate that. But yeah, I don't think there were wrongfully accused people that were doing time there in that prison. I'm not saying there aren't. There surely are, and there's a history of it. Certainly, we're very aware of entire segments of population that are wrongfully accused of crimes they never committed. There's a lot of stories in the US for sure, I'm sure in Italy it happens too. Of all the people that I met, actually, there is one guy who has been accused, who is in for killing a woman in a park. He's a Russian guy. And he claims he's innocent, but I just don't believe it. Honestly, it's very subjective. Nobody believes him. That's why he's still in there. But he never admitted his crime. And he says, I'm not an inmate. He says, I'm a prisoner against my will. I never committed a crime. So it's interesting. But to me, it's very, at first, what was interesting about this kind of trilogy that I'm doing now is, you spend a lot of time maybe reading books or seeing movies about people who have committed crimes, and you read this amazing literature, from, Dostoevsky onwards, about crime, about guilt, and about all this stuff. And to be suddenly in front of a person that has committed serious crimes or just plain robberies, and they're just talking to you, to me, that was so interesting. It's like beyond anything that I ever imagined I would be able to do. And that happened because I was on the island, because I think if I had done let's say a documentary on just a prison, it would have been different. But I'm living there, I'm spending time there. And the moment I wake up until I go to bed, until it's dark, I'm filming all the time. And I never unplug, I'm by myself. So it becomes like a drug, and it's like through being exposed to them, And then I also learn how to hopefully be less judgmental and really giving people who have committed horrible crimes, they're still human beings, I feel. And those who don't want your sympathy, you don't have to worry, because they won't even look at you, I think. But those who maybe deserve a second chance or deserve to be listened and talked to, then it's nice to have that access, And I am saying there was a scene in Gorgona that I included in Gorgona, which is a really amazing scene at a barber. So the barber is an inmate cuts the hair of another inmate, and the guy who's sitting getting his hair cut is just having small talk with the barber, and so they say, oh, did you hear that guy's going out? Yeah, it's going out. Oh, when is he going out? I say, and then he says, when are you going out? And he says, oh, the guy cutting, he says, oh, I got 6.5 more years. Oh, 6.5 more years. Is that with the reduction? Because there's all these systems they calculate. If you're in good behavior, they reduce every year. It's like a discount. With the discount, yeah, with the discount. And he says, and then silence, cutting the hair. And then he says, well, I mean, it's not like you woke up one day and decided to to kill your wife, you know? And the guy says, no, that's the last thing I wanted to do. And then he says, yeah, it just happened, you know? And he says, yeah, and to me, it's like this, it's a bit more elaborate than that, but I'm kind of quoting it. But it's this sense of like, it's like you're entering in another world where people who have committed serious crimes are not, you know, if it was a page, they're not even on the page. Forget the margins, they're outside the page. But you would never know when you talk and meet them. But when you get to the gist of it and you scratch a little bit, you realize there's just this whole other humanity, which is, you know, the sorrow and the grief and the pain they've caused and the pain they're going through if they're dealing with it. To me, it's an incredible world of, like I said, that I was only exposed in literature or in films, you know, never firsthand. So that's why but maybe I will end at 3.5, at 3 films, and I think that's enough, maybe. But thank you very much, everybody, for being here. Thank you.
I did see that there are other questions out there, but we have a reception waiting for us downstairs in Shepherd 250, which is right below this room. So please head down to Shepherd 250 to continue these conversations. And those previous Katz professors who I see are now in the room, please come up to the front for a group photo. Thank you.